First thing up on the show is a soapbox this week, and it's one I wanted to discuss because with the release of games like Elden Ring, which just came out and got a lot of critical acclaim, and Horizon Forbidden West, as well as a few others, Dying Light 2, Nobody Saves the World, Pokemon Arceus, which we actually might be talking about in a little bit. There's already discussion about Game of the Year for 2022. And this...
Well,
yeah.
From what I've heard, it's not going to be for Horizon Forbidden West.
Oh, you did? Because I've seen articles where they are suggesting it is. So...
Oh, I've heard, Yahtzee the other night. Meh.
Meh?
Meh.
Yeah. There's... Depending on who you listen to, I had seen some articles on it. I also did watch a few different reviews that found it to be a massive improvement even over the previous one in how it's structured. Elden Ring, I think, is probably less ambiguous. That's pretty much just everybody having I don't know, just a love fest right now. Well, especially people that like From Software. But...
Everybody but us.
Not that I'm adverse to playing it. I probably will at some point to see, because it sounds different than Dark Souls, which is probably the best comment they could make about it. But at any rate, a lot of people talking about what's great, what has improved, and mostly the conversation has started to come around what is going to be the game of the year for 2022. And folks, it's February when we record this. No. This is a very straightforward thing. I understand you like the game. That's great. You can keep a mental note. Please don't make me start thinking about what is going to be the game of the year. We're like 2 months into the year, and more importantly than all of that is that I think that it undermines the idea that we have another 10 months of games that are going to get released, and that it's kind of like the chucking that off to the side, like, oh yeah, we're done. This is the game of the year, folks.
Yeah, you don't need another game for the rest of the year now.
Pack it in.
You're deciding game of the year now.
Pack it in. There's nothing else getting released. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. When that is absolutely not the case, the year is actually looking pretty good. Hopefully a lot of the releases that are coming out are going to be
is Star
positive.
Citizen finally coming out?
No. Don't worry about that. But I think the one that I'm actually looking forward to seeing if it's good or not is Shadow of Chernobyl is going to be getting a new version later in the year. There's actually a long list. They've been talking about how this is looking like a pretty impressive year for a lot of big game releases. But the idea that, because we had a few big game releases at the beginning of the year, which is not always typical, usually you'll see them around, the end of the year, November, December, when we get into the holiday season. But because we had some big releases right up at the front of the year, people are already making picks for Game of the Year and talking about, oh yeah, is this going to be the Game of the Year? We don't know. You've only seen literally 2%, 5% maybe, of the games that are going to be in contention for that. It's probably too early to be talking about it. And I think that if we try that too early, we're going to have a problem later on when we have all the other games come up and it's like, but I had my game of the year. It's like, yes, you did.
Yeah, when we go, oh, look at all these other games that came out this year.
Yes, there's a wide range, a wide variety to choose from. Now, the reason why I think a lot of people are doing that is because there is, again, because you get a lot of these big releases at the end of the year, a sense of forgetting the stuff that came earlier. I've seen that happen a lot, where people will be like, oh right, I played that 7 months ago, and I forgot about it. So if you're doing it so that you can remember this for the future, put little mental there to say, yep, that's going to be something I have to revisit, that's fine. I mean, even I do that when I'm talking about, like, the best to worst list, is I try to keep a running list of everything that came out during the year, so that I remember everything I played. Because otherwise there are a couple that I had from this last year that I would have forgotten I played altogether. So I get that, but it is just way too early to declare. I mean, imagine if before they announced the Oscar nominations 2 months after the year started, and yeah.
Well, I don't think that's quite what you mean. I think it'd be like, imagine if in February they said, all right, well, Denzel Washington might be getting the Oscar this year based on his performance from this movie that came out in January.
Yeah. Oh, and they never do that.
And then we go,
yeah.
It's February. There's 60 other films coming out this year. It's like, meh.
That's the thing that always concerns me, though, is the idea that, like, yeah, it's going to be fine if you want to say that this is probably going to be in contention, but I think that there's some folks that jump on it really too quickly that's like, yeah, this is it, no problem. That Elden Ring, I think, is especially going to be that way, where I've heard people talking about it as masterpieces, strong recommendations, the best work that From Software has ever made, and my concern is that that's going to cloud people's judgment as they look at other very good games that are going to be releasing later this year, where...
Yeah, you tend to get people forgetting that these are publishers that you want to put out games in those cases.
Mm-hmm.
These are publishers you expect to put out good games that already have a massive following.
Right.
As opposed to some of the more breakaway titles, like Nobody Saves the World, I think you were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know who made that.
Drinkbox.
I don't know who they are.
They made Guacamelee, which was again, you don't know. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
But you know, it's stuff like that. It's games that are suddenly, oh, these are really good, and they become really popular, from out of nowhere. But then again, then it becomes like, oh, it's the indie game of the year type deal.
Yeah, and I guess that's the end problem always seems to be that when we're talking about the Game of the Year competitors, especially with the amount of media attention that they get, it's usually from large publishers that are able to give out a lot of review copies to people that are able to promote their games a lot, which is not uncommon among media in general. They do that a lot with movies, the Oscars, you know, they will throw out screeners for people, as well as nice, very elaborate gift baskets for my consideration. But I think game devs probably do that a little bit too. But
they do.
Yeah. But the thing about it is that then that also goes into the fact that, yeah, a lot of smaller studios don't necessarily get that consideration, don't necessarily get that kind of PR, and in some ways are doing some of the most innovative work. I've been a little encouraged because you do see them start to pop up a little bit more on people's Game of the Year lists, when they're talking about the best games of this last year. I know with Polygon, and I saw some on the Game Awards and stuff, where they were acknowledging that smaller games and companies existed. Like, their existence is there. It's just
You know what we just need to do is to get rid of the Game Awards.
You just need to get rid of the Game Awards.
It's stupid. It makes no point to have it. Let people play what they want. Don't artificially grade something and say it's the best thing that came out. It's like, well, there's the difference in opinions. You know, that's when people would constantly tell me that, oh, Final Fantasy VII is the best game ever, and I would go, yeah, and I don't trust your judgment, so I'm not gonna play it.
The reason why Jeff Keighley was really the one that started that, or was spearheading that. The point of that was to try and create, like, the Oscars or the Emmys or the Grammys, but for video games. That's what they really wanted to do. And
why?
Maybe they did, and that's the problem.
That is the problem. It's like, yeah, you're getting...
Maybe that's the problem.
You know, I was listening to something about this, and I think it was Yahtzee and Jack Packard, maybe, on something slightly else, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was or it might have been somebody else, but I think it was them. the problem with the Game Awards is that the people behind the scenes on the Game Awards are like AAA game developer presidents and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not a conflict of interest.
Yeah, it's the same problem with who is picking it in all of those award ceremonies, is that you have a certain committee essentially that's doing a lot of that, not just for the actual determining who's the game of the year or the movie of the year or anything, but also who's picking the nominations and the nominees in the first place.
So it was like, yeah, these people are AAA game developing presidents, and then like the media outlets that are partial in there as well are owned by part of the other conglomerates with them. So it's like, it's a completely almost rigged system essentially.
Yeah.
It'd be like if we went, all right, we're gonna vote on, it's the tabletop game of the year, or the ENnies, for instance.
Yep.
It's like, it's if that was judged by the people that, like on Amazon or something. It's like, oh yes, which game do we get the most money from?
Yeah.
It's something like that. And it's just like, really?
It's kind of like if the ENnies were run by, like, Milton Bradley. And Hasbro. Yeah.
Wizards,
yeah, just Wizards, Paizo, just like all of them are the ones that are running the show.
Best RPG of the world in the entire, tabletop RPG game, and it is just
the Legend Award. Yeah.
It's
D&D.
won by WotC.
Yeah.
And like Fantasy Flight.
Yeah.
And then Paizo.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, we're giving out the awards. It goes to D&D and Pathfinder 3.5.
Hey, who would have guessed?
Yeah. It's not anything that I think we should put any real stock into.
And it is, unfortunately, with anything that's artistic, and this is where a lot of the award ceremonies are, it's very subjective anyway. Your game of the year is not going to be mine. Everybody knows that. I think that's why there's like so many disparate lists at the end of the year when they have that. But I was watching a Skill Up video, and it was about the Game Awards for 2021, and he was just fascinated by the fact that, like, Deathloop was winning so many awards for, like, things like game design over, like, Returnal and Psychonauts 2, which he which he then goes, games that have better level design than Deathloop. Just it's over there with them, with all of them. And I understand that. Like, there were a lot of people that had problems with, like, 12 minutes, and 12 minutes was up there with game design legends as well. And it's hard. And some genres that even kind of get shafted. It was great to see, like, Forza Horizon 5 was on there, but, like, racing games and all of those usually
Forza got shafted. Everyone was like, this game is gorgeous and absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
like,
and
all the fans are like, this game is great, and they're like, whatever.
Yeah. And, like, I'm happy that, like, at least when they got around to, like, Game of the Year, it was It Takes Two, which does come from a smaller studio at least, and is like a cooperative game, which means I'll never play it, but the thing is, but at least I could respect that. Like, they weren't just going to go, Halo, just all Halo all the time, just Halo Infinite. But I find that to be the problem with not just Game of the Year as a general concept, but mostly trying to have that conversation this early in the year is detrimental to everything else that comes after it. And there's always a feeling in the air that you have to rush to judgment, especially when there's so many outlets that want to get their reviews out early, want to get clicks on them, want to get media attention to them, and sometimes shouting, this could be the game of the year, or this is my game of the year, is very easy way to, like, get attention and eyeballs on it. But folks, that doesn't mean that we can't that we can't dismiss everything else that comes afterward.
Sure we can. We're gonna dismiss everything, especially what comes after this episode.
Exactly.
This is the podcast episode of the year.
This is the podcast episode of the year.
Out of all the podcasts, mind you.
That's
Not
right.
just ours.
No, out of every podcast episode, this is podcast episode of the year. That's got to be what the segment's called. The podcast episode of the year. and we're going to make it about that. And the judging was done literally by the two of us. We decided it. And we were the only nominee. And we are now the winner, and we have no trophy for it, but, you know, there's a trophy in our heads. We won.
The award is $50,000.
And someone's going to pay that to us.
That whoever's listening to this needs to supply us with.
That's right. That's right. We are part of the Total Podcast
Collective.
Yeah. Collective.
With a K.
Collective, yeah, Total Podcast Collective, and there needs to be money attached to that. Now let's see some game previews. Okay, let's